I've only been working on the Willamette Falls for 4 years, and I've been dreaming and thinking about it for 40 years. When I first laid eyes on it a long time ago when I came, I looked down from that spot right there with my dad, and he says, "You need to do something about that someday. It's choked with industry." I said, "Okay, Dad, I'll do that. Thank you." So here we are. So it's really a rare opportunity. I just want to sort of move forward here quickly. I know we're wanting to think about, that is not my first slide. Gotta back up a couple. There we go. It's sort of a reminder of the larger context. And a good friend of mine always said the obvious: every river has two sides. And we really want to think about, the Oregon City side. We do want to be cognizant of the Westland side and this incredible treasure that holds those two sides together. We do know that there's some uncertainty about the Westland side and the future of the locks, so we're all looking forward to what that might play out as, but just wanted to sort of reinforce that idea of context, and not only Oregon City on the downtown level, but all the way up to the bluff where we are now and to the rest of the city up above. There's a close relationship to downtown, of course, with the Blue Heron property and the McLaughlin Promenade, and we do want to look forward to a time when there would be a future connection up to the bluff, and just to experience this site, to experience everything that you see around you, the geology, the energy of the river, the improbable things that have happened here over time. It's been a site of innovation as well, and so we want to make sure we keep an eye on all those layers. The Willamette River, I'll just spend some time talking about. I grew up on a river, so I'm very tied to rivers. It's a really important river in the Northwest, and its headwaters is 300 miles up in the Cascades, all the way to the Columbia River. It drains 11,200 square miles, and you can see in the upper right-hand corner that idea of the Willamette Valley and what an enormous watershed this really is. It's the longest river in the U.S. that flows north, and the falls itself is about 42 feet in height. The main stem of the river itself is about 187 miles long, and the Willamette Falls is about river mile 26, so that's measuring backwards from the confluence, so it's about 26 miles to the Columbia. Obviously, there was an incredible collision of plate tectonics, and I'm not a geologist to explain this very well, but Western Oregon, the Willamette Valley, was really created by these plate of tectonics, and this big plate was also modified by a series of Missoula floods that swept through over 400 feet from river level, above the river level. I'm not sure where we are right now, but we might be about the top of where that would have been. And the falls have been eroding in lots of ways over time. Every grain, every particle that moves over that is contributing to that effort. And we can easily see the basalt formations, the palisades that this river flows through. Very important setting for this falls. I'm not going to do a lot of history because I know there's way more experts in history than me, but I just thought I'd bring this picture up looking downriver. This was before the arch bridge, this was prior to the dam, early 1900s view from Kanema Bluff, and you can still see a similar view from up there today. You can see the Holly Pulp and Paper building. You can even see, if you look closely, there's a river boat in there, and there were portage trails along both sides of the river at one time. And then this is a view looking again more closely toward that area of the falls and how the industry encroached on both sides. And you can see that Holly Pulp and Paper Company. You can see the lumber mill foundations. So what you're seeing there is really different from what we see today. And I'll talk just a little bit more about the river itself, the river characteristics. And I look out on the river every day. I have a office in downtown Portland, and I always measure its mood. I cross it twice a day. I always have a feel and a connection to the river. And there's really robust water in the spring. It's really, like today, a very impressive display of sound and mist. The falls oftentimes are all around you. It's not just one thing. And sometimes you can be soaking wet, and sometimes you could be freezing cold when you're out in the rivers blowing ice across your feet. At this point, probably around today, there can be 60,000 cubic feet per second going over the falls. And then at other times of the year, the summer, it's about 6,000 cubic feet going over the falls. So it's a really big difference. The dry period that we have during the summer is a very different experience. And you're looking at this beautiful basalt with trickles of water coming over it. The horseshoe crest length, as we know it today, is about 1,500 feet long. Prior to development, it's believed to have been about 2,500 feet long. And we have to always remember that the low flow in the summer during the tourist season is going to be very different from what we see today, or even that people were looking at 2 weeks ago when the water was really much higher than it is today. It's an exquisitely beautiful river. Even without the waterfall itself, it's a stunning river. And if you think about all that watershed of river, of water coming down out of the Willamette Valley and its entire watershed from Cascades to the Coast Range, this is like an hourglass. If you've seen those cross sections that the graphics depict with this very deep, deep canyon where the water's shooting through, it's about 300 feet across. So you think about all that energy, that much volume of water coming through. No wonder we're second to Niagara Falls. And it's a very popular boating destination. There's lots of people out fishing today, spring and fall. There's a lot of recreation people that use it in the summer as well. There's ski-doos, there's kayaks, all kinds of people using it. But this is a view from the water level that the tour wasn't able to see today, but looking how much natural bank has been lost in this industrial context. This is the pipe chase that's several hundred feet long. And part of this is going to be excavated to be able to restore a fisheries alcove in where it was once located. It's interesting to imagine this, what we were just looking at in the earlier slides about the kind of lumber and paper and milling complexes that were right in this alcove site. And the remnants, the curious geometric forms that we're seeing now, you know, those the generators among the basaltic outcrops that still endure today. So a lot of people really are fascinated by this particular view of the river. I know I am. And it's a real surprise because very few people have actually seen this spot. A lot of us have been out there. It's also a capricious river, and it tends to flood. 1996 was the most recent. It's a reminder of how we tend to build in harm's way. And there's been floods in 1964, 1894, 1861, and many others that just simply sent water down Main Street. And that still is a possibility today. The Willamette River here is doing what rivers do. And other times it's the photographer's light. It's shooting against that south-facing sun orientation that brings that mist up and makes it alive for you. Coupled with that is the falls itself and looking at the reflections in the lagoon. So it's an incredible sort of hydrologic phenomena when we actually get out there and stand and put ourselves in that place and put ourselves at risk of being right in the middle of all this water that is so phenomenal. I'll talk just a little bit about river-related habitat typologies, and one of the roles that we've had on the design team is to really look at how restoration can take place. And we'll just go through a few examples real quickly. Part of the habitat is in-channel aquatics. So this is open water. There's really no vegetation in here, but this is where the Chinook, the steelhead, the coho, the sturgeon, the lamprey, you know, we've got active fisheries in this river. Low temperatures, low nutrient kind of environment. Fish are just basically moving through. The alcove aquatic is off-channel fisheries, so that's what we look to restore within parts of the site. And this is really important for fisheries and lamprey to rest before they're navigating these falls. There may be floating aquatic habitat in there. And then also the riparian basalt that you're seeing, herbaceous plants. Some are quite rare. They live in the mist. There's mosses and lichens and plant communities. I hear there's an orchid that lives there. And these are areas that can have periodic inundation, very highly sensitive habitat that we're looking to restore here. These are examples. There's the in-water aquatic, and then the alcove aquatic, and the riparian basalt. Those are the exact same picture, just at 2 different seasons. So you can see how the river, as it recedes out of these alcoves, the fisheries and the birds and the insects come in and inhabit these places that are sometimes underwater. And then the upland habitat typologies that a lot of us are more familiar with. Riparian woodland is the sort of the floodplain level plant communities, grand fir, cedar, Oregon ash, cottonwood. These are trees that can withstand the seasonally wet soils, the periodic inundation. The next one is the upland, what's that? Upland Forest, and this is more the low temperate forest a lot of us spend time hiking in, or perhaps even living in, and it's very common to the valley floor, moist, very moist certain times of year with a very dry summer. So there's a lot of difference from season to season. And then there's the Willamette Savannah, dry to mesic grasslands, hilltop slopes, patchy, Oregon oak. This is what we're looking at the tops of the hills, and even in this area, if this building were here, this is probably what this would be. And the fescues and the camas in that shallow soil, and these are very fragile habitats. There's a loss of these habitats in the Willamette Valley, so seeking to restore it here in and around the site is really important. These are examples on the ground of what that looks like, the river basalt. A lot of potential for enhanced woodland in this area. And then the typical upland forest you're seeing across on the westland side. This is obviously logged at one point, but grown in with deciduous trees. And examples of the upland forest and the Willamette Savannah. A lot of us hike in these areas. As I said, the center slide is the Pacific madrone, an incredible survivor kind of a tree, along with the Oregon white oak, which coexist often in the same area. And then there's the Willamette Savannah, and someone, I guess Andrew mentioned this morning about the Camassia Preserve across the river. And this, to me, it's more exquisite than I can even tell you about. This has very thin soil. It's got ephemeral streams and ponds on it, has rock outcrops, and the bloom over there, as we speak, I was there yesterday, it's just phenomenal. Definitely worthy of protection. And with these kinds of exquisite landscapes brings the wildlife, remarkable wildlife. We were watching birds this morning, osprey, great heron, not uncommon to see raptors soaring across the river, bald eagles, hawks, and I think they also prey on the pigeons that live on the blue heron site. So that maybe isn't a bad thing. And then thank you for talking about the migratory fish this morning. It's really meaningful to recognize even things that we can't always see. And the Pacific lamprey, we understand, migrate at night, and they are very tenacious, and they move up along the rocks like that. And they almost are, in a way, kind of I think a flagship species for a site like this, for a project like this, that as tenacious as they are, they make progress and they live to endure in the future. So we really respect that. And the steelhead trout example of another very tenacious fish, still harvested today by tribal members. And while we were working on the design, we talked about the seasonal relationships of all these activities, everything from the river flow to the habitat, to the target species, the resident species, the activities of water by the way PGE manages the dam, and just looking at all these different kinds of activities that take place throughout the season of an entire year. And we were talking this morning earlier on the tour about the 4 core values, and we felt that these were really the underpinning of the design that you're seeing today. Public access, historic and cultural interpretation, the healthy habitats, the economic redevelopment. And we seek to achieve a balance of these 4 core values, recognizing the history, the evolution of the place, and to be able to tell these multiple narratives. So we ask ourselves, what's still hidden from view? It's a 3-dimensional, very layered site. How do we create a narrative that captures all this? I frankly don't know, and I'm anxious to hear from others about how we best do that. And then what are the selective removals to enable these key elements to remain? How do we reduce perhaps the visual chaos of what's going on out there and really be able to allow the honesty and the authenticity of the site to come through? Reduce the distraction. And then let's realize the potentials, opening up the tail races, restoring some of the banks, partial removals of structure to be able to see that 3rd dimension of the site. And then assisting with nature's recovery, allowing some vegetation to recolonize within the industrial artifacts, as well as the restoration on the banks themselves. And we're really all here to make memorable, meaningful places, finding ways to preserve the context, revealing those layers, being very conscious of what's there and what's missing. And then recognizing and demonstrating the authenticity, tell the stories, allow that complexity to create intrigue. Everyone comes with a different point of view, and I guess our goal is to allow people to come again and again and again and still feel like they haven't seen it all, because they really haven't. And with that comes a responsibility to educate and foster curiosity. So we think through the lens of children. What are their stories? What are they going to be learning here? How do we allow visitors, and especially kids, to have this sensual experience? After all, it's one of discovery. So I guess we're all here for the same reason, to transform this remarkable place. And looking into the future of this project, I'd just like to end on this photograph that reminds me of when my dad and I first stood there, I guess, 3 of us from the design team, and see what we can do to inspire one another and achieve the great things that are possible on this site. Thank you very much.